oldest war in the galaxy never ended, and every nightmare of the 41st millennium is just its dying echo. Long before the Imperium, before the first human spark flickered beneath Terra's ash-choked sky, there was only silence broken by the heartbeat of newborn stars. Across that silence drifted to ancient powers, one forged from cold logic, the other from raw, simmering psionic fury. The Necrunter, fragile and cursed by their dying sun, and the Old Ones, masters of life itself. Their paths should never have crossed, but destiny had other plans, and the first spark of hatred ignited a conflict so vast it would scar the galaxy. For 60 million years, in the darkness between the stars, a storm was gathering. The Necrunter lived beneath a malignant sun that burned them with every breath. Their lives were short, filled with bitterness, their cities towering like skeletal monoliths reaching for salvation perpetually out of reach. Rage festered in them, rage at the injustice of a universe that offered them brilliance of mind but bodies condemned to suffer. And they discovered the Old Ones, a species that danced freely across time, gifted with immortality. Something inside the Necrunter broke. Envy twisted into wrath. They demanded the secret of eternal life. The Old Ones refused, and in that refusal a wound was carved across reality itself. The First War was hopelessly one-sided. The Old Ones controlled the webway, slipping through space as if strolling through a garden. Their mastery of biology created soldiers grown from thought and shaped for purpose. The Necrunter, brilliant though they were, could only fight in straight lines, ships burning across real space while their enemies vanished like ghosts. Every defeat sharpened the Necrunter's hatred, and hatred in this galaxy is a beacon. It calls to things that should never be woken. In the far reaches of the cosmos, beyond mortal understanding, something stirred. Vast beings of living starfire watched the Necrunter suffer. They whispered promises in the void, promises of vengeance, of forever, of power beyond the chains of mortality. The Necrunter listened. They should not have. The beings that answered their prayers were the Stand, the star gods, entities that fed upon the animating force of existence itself. And they descended, their forms shone like suns given cruel intent, and the Necrunter bowed before them as saviors. But no god gives a gift without a price. The Stand offered immortality by stripping away everything that made the Necrunter living. In the great biotransference, entire civilizations marched willingly into the furnaces of transformation. Their flesh was torn from them, their souls devoured, their minds transferred into bodies of necrodermis living metal without end, without decay, without freedom. Their anguish was swallowed by the star gods who feasted upon every scream. The Necrunter were gone. In their place stood the Necron's immortal, soulless legion. And with this new army, the Stand declared a war that would unmake creation. The galaxy burned beneath the first true war in heaven. Necron legions descended on world after world, harvesting life with cold precision. The Old Ones fought back with all the mastery of their ancient craft, unleashing bioengineered marvels, reptilian warriors, psychic titans, whole species designed to wage war. But even their genius faltered under the relentless advance of the Necrons and their star god masters. Stars dimmed. Worlds cracked, the webway itself trembled. As the conflict grew harsher, something else began to react the warp. Every act of fear, anguish, triumph, and death echoes within the Imperium, and the war in heaven shook it like a great cosmic gong. Storms erupted, currents twisted, psychic energy thickened until it pulled into consciousness. The first proto-demons twitched into existence. The Old Ones, desperate, tried to craft new races with stronger psychic potential, fledgling defenders who could turn the tides. In doing so, they unknowingly gave shape to the first true gods of the warp, entities that would one day become the dark gods of chaos. The stage was set for horrors neither side had foreseen. The Stand fed on the suffering of the war, growing stronger, more arrogant, more monstrous. They consumed whole systems, devouring the life energy of stars and souls alike. Even the Necrons began to fear the beings they once worshipped. The Old Ones were losing ground, betrayed by their own creations as psychic storms tore apart their empires. Races crafted to save the galaxy now fractured it. Some species fell to madness. Others disappeared entirely. The war in heaven spiraled beyond strategy, beyond purpose. It became a cataclysm devouring both victor and victim. At last, the Necrons realized the truth too late. They were tools, not beneficiaries. The Stand would eventually consume everything, including them. So the Necron dynasties turned their cold logic inward. They rebelled against their so-called gods. In a war within a war, they shattered the Stand into countless fragments. fragments, binding the shards like broken suns chained in eternal agony. The star gods died screaming, scattered but not destroyed, trapped in prisons of necrodermis. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy fell silent. The Necrons, exhausted and purposeless, retreated into their tomb worlds, sealing themselves away in stasis. But the damage was done. The old ones were extinct or vanished. Their creations wandered aimlessly, some destined to become the Eldari, the Krork, and ultimately humanity itself. The war boiled with newborn gods hungering. The webway was shattered in places, bleeding unreality into real space. And the scars carved by the war in heaven would influence everything that followed the rise of chaos, the birth of the Imperium, and every atrocity yet to come. Millions of years passed. Empires rose and fell. Stars lived and died. New species looked to the heavens and saw only silence, unaware of the wars that had shaped their destinies. But the echoes remained, every psychic scream, every warp storm, every ancient ruin buried beneath. Alien sands, all of it a fossil of a conflict too vast to comprehend. And still, the Necrons sleep beneath the soil of 1,000 worlds, waiting. Their tombs pulse with energy. Their masters dream of an age where flesh is purged and the galaxy returns to the rule of immortal metal. Across the warp, the dark gods whisper, their origins intertwined with the horrors wrought during that ancient age. And in the shadows of forgotten ruins stand shards still remembering the taste of suns. Because the war in heaven never truly ended, it left fingerprints on every horror that plagues the 41st millennium, on the rise of the Eldari, on humanity's psychic awakening, on the cataclysm of chaos, on the very existence of the warp. And if one looks carefully across the galaxy today, they might see signs that all of it is beginning again. For the tombs are opening, and the truth of what wakes within them is far more terrifying than the galaxy is prepared to face. The only question now is, are these ancient powers returning to finish their war? Or did they never stop fighting it at all? For 10,000 years, the Imperium has whispered a single hope into the ashes of dying worlds that the ancient powers of the galaxy are long gone. Hope is a fragile thing, and in the grim darkness of the far future, it shatters with the quietest tremor. Deep beneath a battlefield forgotten by every Imperial record, a tremor pulses through a buried tomb so faint it barely stirs the dust, but enough to send a data spike through time itself. Somewhere in the warp, something answers. And in that moment, galaxy unknowingly takes its next step toward a war older than humanity's first breath. The tremor reaches Terra not by sound or signal, but through a vision that claws its way into the mind of a single man. Scholar Gauzy Racevale wakes in his chamber, breath ragged, the scent of burning ozone clinging to his robes. He has seen something impossible, glimpses of metal giants rising from beneath the earth, a star bleeding crimson and a figure of living light screaming in chains. He tries to banish the images with prayer, but the visions do not fade. They grow clearer, sharper, heavier, as if some ancient force forces them into his skull. Vale knows the penalty for harboring unsanctioned psychic manifestations. He also knows he cannot stop them. Something is calling him, dragging him into memories millions of years old. Aboard the battle barge, Sword of Cerulean Wrath, Brother Sergeant Acastian of the Ultramarine stands in the quiet gloom of the Stratagem, staring at a flickering holo display. Ports have arrived from the eastern fringe worlds going silent, scout ships vanishing without trace, entire continents trembling as if the mantle beneath them stirs with some terrible awakening. Acastian's gauntleted hand tightens, He has fought tyranids, orcs, heretics, and worse. But these new reports speak of something different: precision, silence, and a coldness that even a space marine finds unsettling. Across the display, a single symbol reappears again and again, a stylized sun breaking into shards. Acastian has seen it once before, carved into the ruins of a Xenos vault on a long-dead world. Necron! At the edge of Imperial space, a lone exploration vessel drifts through the void, its crew reduced to whispers by fear and radiation. The ship's auspex detects something vast emerging from the surface of a barren moon, metal spires rising like the ribs of a colossal beast. The crew watches in frozen terror as an entire complex awakens, glowing with unnatural emerald light. Then the moon splits open, revealing a chamber that has been sealed for 60 million years. In its center hovers a fragment of a star god, bound in a matrix of necrodermis that rise like tortured steel. The crew does not understand what they are witnessing. They only understand terror. Their screams echo through the ship as the first pulses of the shard's hunger ripple outward. On Terra, Vale is drawn to the Librarium Obscurus, a chamber forbidden even to most scholars. He follows the visions like a man walking through fog, his mind burning with fragments of a war he never lived. A golden hallway, a world of crystal oceans. Cities turn to glass by beams of star fire. Vale opens a sealed vault and finds a tablet of black stone covered in symbols older than any human tongue. As his fingers brush its surface, the room dissolves. He sees the Old One shaping a young species on a world bathed in light. He sees Necron legions marching beneath banners of fire. He sees the stand towering like living suns. And then he sees something else, something the visions had not shown before. A rift in reality widening, spreading, fueled not by chaos but by fear. Among the stars, Acastian stands with his squad on the surface of Larnara 4. Windswept world scarred by ancient structures. The ground beneath their boots drums with a sickening rhythm. When the tremor peaks, the earth splits open in a line stretching to the horizon. From the abyss below, skeletal warriors rise in perfect formation. Their eyes burn with cold green fire. The Marines open fire, bolters roaring, but for every Necron that falls, another climbs from the abyss. Acastian fights with disciplined rage, but even he feels a flicker of unease. These machines do not rush, do not roar, do not hesitate. They simply advance, and somewhere deeper in the pit, something heavier stirs as if a giant of metal is waking from a long dream. In the swirling madness of the warp, demons howl with sudden agitation. They sense an imbalance, a disturbance not born of emotion but of ancient machinery grinding back to life. A sorcerer of 1,000 suns, drifting in a realm where time has no meaning, feels the tremor like a knife across his mind. He peers through the warp's shifting tides and sees the truth. The Necron's awakening is more than the return of an old enemy. It is the stirring of the same forces that crippled the warp in ages past. If the Necrons rise and fall, the warp itself could burn. Chaos gods could weaken. Demonic empires could fracture. The sorcerer laughs, a sound without joy. The galaxy believes chaos is its greatest doom. How fragile that arrogance seems now. Vale brings the obsidian tablet to the High Senate of Terra, but the moment it is revealed, alarms blare. Beset-bearing inquisitors enter the chamber with weapons drawn. The tablet's symbols, Necron hieroglyphs, are declared heretical, its possession punishable by death. Vale tries to explain, but the vision sees him again. This time, they are sharper, unbearable. He sees the stand shackled, their cosmic light dimmed. He sees Necron cryptex weaving impossible technology, fusing physics and sorcery. And then he sees the true horror. The Necrons are not waking randomly. They are waking according to a pattern, a design intended to reshape the galaxy. Vale collapses, whispering a single phrase that chills even the Inquisitor. They are finishing the war. On Larnara 4, Acastian's squad retreats into the ruins of an ancient vault as the Necrons tighten their formation. Inside the vault, Acastian finds murals etched into the metal walls, depictions of towering beings of light, devoured by metal serpents. Beneath them lies a circular panel carved with glyphs matching the symbol on the distress reports. When Acastian touches it, the panel glows and a holographic map bursts to life, marking dozens of star systems across the galaxy. All of them flicker with awakening tomb worlds. Acastian realizes the truth with grim clarity. This is not an isolated resurgence. It is a coordinated galactic reactivation, and Larnara 4 is only the beginning. For a moment, there is calm. A Castian stands in the vault's quiet gloom, the green light casting long shadows. He feels the weight of what he has discovered. The Imperium teeters on the brink of collapse, already torn by civil war, Xenos assault, and the warp storms. No enemy older than recorded history rises with mathematical precision. His gene-enhanced heart does not falter, but something inside him shifts. Not fear, but a deeper emotion, the burden of impossible duty. He knows the Imperium will demand everything of him, and perhaps more than even a space marine can give. In the warp, the Chaos Gods turn their attention toward real space, their amusement turning to interest, and then worry. They sense the resurgence of the same ancient logic that once threatened to starve the warp of life itself. Something old is returning, something that does not feel, does not dream, does not hate an enemy that even demons cannot corrupt. For the first time in eons, the dark gods lean closer to the fabric of reality, watching carefully, their whispers growing quieter. Veil awakens in chains within an inquisitorial interrogation chamber. Flickering lumen strips cast long shadows, and the air smells of incense and cauterized steel. The Inquisitor before him demands truth, but Veil can only speak the words forced into his mind by the visions. He tells them of star gods broken, of ancient engines stirring, of the warp trembling under the weight of a forgotten logic. Some Inquisitors scoff, others pale, for hidden among the visions is a prophecy one not recorded by the Imperium, but etched in Necron's stasis vaults. Prophecy that speaks of a moment when the galaxy will stand again at the edge of the same abyss that consumed the old ones, and humanity, for all its strength, may be nothing more than a footnote in that ancient struggle. As the Inquisitor debates Veil's fate, alarms howl across the fortress. A psychic shockwave tears through the sector, sharp, cold, and merciless. It is not a warp surge. It is something infinitely more disturbing, a pulse of anti-psychic force rippling through real space like the tolling of a great bell. Psychers collapse. Demons flicker out of existence. Astropaths scream as their soul bonds are severed. And across the galaxy, 100 tomb worlds glow brighter. A Castian feels the shockwave on Lornara 4 as a coldness that reaches through his armor, through his transhuman flesh to the very marrow of his being. The vault lights flare. The holographic map shifts. One of the marked systems pulses brighter than the rest of the system near the galactic north. Its name half erased in Imperial archives. A Castian stares at it, a sense of recognition gnawing at him. He has heard of this system. A dead world. A forgotten war zone. A place where an entire Imperial crusade vanished centuries ago without explanation. He whispers its name, Aldenaris, far above Lornara 4, in the void between stars. Something vast begins to move, something buried for millions of years. Beneath a planet-sized scar of necrodermis, its awakening radiates through the night like a silent scream. As the galaxy shudders in its shadow, one truth becomes undeniable. The war in heaven is not returning. It is evolving. What rises on Aldenaris will decide whether the Imperium faces another ancient enemy, or something far worse, something that even the Stand once feared. And the first tremor of its awakening has only just begun. cold light of Altaneris bleeds across the void like the glow of a dying candle, faint yet impossibly persistent. Akastian watches it from the viewing port of the Thunderhawk that ferries him and his brothers toward orbit, its pale radiance reflecting off the ceramite of his helm like a smear of ghost fire. He feels something he cannot name, an instinct older than his genes see, deeper than memory. Altaneris is not just another tomb world. Something buried beneath its crust calls to him, in the same way a battlefield calls to a dying warrior. He senses destiny here sharpened into a blade, and blades, he knows, are made to cut. The Thunderhawk pierces the upper atmosphere, and the view fractures into storms of metallic dust swirling like a planetary shroud. Lightning, tinted an unnatural green, tears across the sky. Akastian tightens his grip on the harness as turbulence rattles the gunship. Brother Jorvin mutters a half-prayer, half-curse. Then, for a moment, the turbulence stops entirely. Akastian looks out the port again and sees the storm part around them in a perfect circle. It is not nature. It is not chance. Something down there knows they are coming, and it is watching. Beneath the surface of Terra, Scholar Makos Veil lies strapped to a diagnostic slab, his mind flickering between madness and clarity. He no longer sees with his own eyes. The visions have grown stronger, sharper, relentless. He sees Altaneris as if floating above it, watching continents shift and fracture under forces older than humanity. He sees structures waking, gears of cosmic design turning after millions of years of stillness. And deeper still, he sees a chamber shaped like a sun cracked down the middle, as if something within it had clawed violently to escape. The Inquisitor overseeing him leans closer, asking questions with calm menace. Vale can barely speak, but when he does, his voice is hollow. You think the Necrons are the threat, he whispers. But the Necrons fear something too. The Inquisitor pauses, his confidence flickering. Vale continues, his eyes unfocused but luminous. The Old Ones created life. The Stand devoured stars. But what slept in Altaneris was neither creator nor consumer. It was Warden. The Inquisitor opens his mouth to respond, but Vale suddenly convulses as if unseen claws tear at his soul. The room fills with the metallic scent of ozone. Lenses crack. Machines fail. When the tremor subsides, Vale looks up with eyes like shattered glass. If it wakes, he murmurs, then what it once contained has already begun to slip free. The Thunderhawk descends through a tear in the storm, revealing the surface below an endless plain of black metal plates arranged in concentric circles, each one glowing faintly with lines of emerald energy. Akastian realizes with cold clarity that the entire surface of Altaneris is a mechanism, a world-sized device, perhaps a prison, perhaps a weapon, perhaps both. The Thunderhawk skims over a vast fissure that pulses with sickly light, and then the ground opens. A massive spire of necrodermis erupts upward, ripping through the crust like a blade through flesh. The Thunderhawk twists violently, alarm shrieking, as the eruption unleashes a seismic shockwave that spirals across the world. They crash. The world becomes fire and metal as the Thunderhawk plows into the ground, torn apart by the quake. For a brief second, Akastian feels weightlessness, then crushing impact. He rises from the wreckage, smoke curling from his pauldrons. He sees Brother Jorvin pinned beneath a shattered wing. Akastian lifts it with impossible strength, but he knows the truth before Jorvin speaks. The Marine's spine is shattered. Even a demigod of war cannot survive this. Jorvin grips Akastian's gauntlet, his voice steady despite the agony. Finish the mission, brother. Akastian nods and closes Jorvin's eyes. The storm rumbles overhead like distant mourning. Duty, he reminds himself, is heavier than grief. Deep within the warp, the chaos gods gather in uneasy silence. Something is shifting in real space. Something they cannot control. They feel it like a pressure on the skin of reality, a presence that does not belong to the warp yet touches it all the same. The gods sense no hunger in it, no emotion, no weakness. It is an intellect without ego, a logic that seeks neither worship nor destruction but compliance. Such entities once existed. They are remembered only in the oldest nightmares of the demons. Tzeentch, ever hungry for knowledge, whispers that a dead intelligence stirs one older than chaos, older than mortal fear, older than even the Necrons. And then Khorne snarls because for the first time in 10,000 years he feels something close to caution. Akastian leads the surviving Marines across the metallic plain. The ground vibrates beneath them, pulsing with an almost heartbeat-like rhythm. The fissure widens, and from its depths rise obelisks carved with symbols Acastion has never seen, curved lines intersecting with sharp angles as if the philosophies of design fought each other on the same surface. This is not Necron craftsmanship. It is older. His autosenses detect a resonance, a frequency designed to interfere with warp energies. Psychers would be crippled here, demons unable to manifest. Acastion's breath slows. If this world was a prison, it was built to contain something capable of tearing the warp itself apart. Vale's mind drifts deeper into the visions until he stands, or believes he stands, inside the sun-shaped chamber beneath Altaneris. The walls are lined with conduits, rivers of living metal that pulse with memories not his own. He senses a presence trapped here long ago, one that reshaped entire star systems with thought alone, being with mastery over psychic and physical laws. Being the Necrons feared more than the old ones. Vale reaches toward the center of the chamber and something reaches back. A whisper, a name. He recoils, screaming, as the chamber door within the vision splinters like rotten wood. And the Inquisitor watching him realizes the scholar is not just seeing the past. He is seeing the present. Deep within Altaneris, Acastion stands before a colossal gate cracked open from its inside. Light pours out like molten gold, casting shadows that dance like the silhouettes of giants. The Marines ready their weapons as a low hum rises, a harmonic resonance that seems to vibrate within their skulls. Acastion steps closer and feels warmth, not the warmth of fire, but of memory of something ancient recalling its purpose. Then he sees it, a figure standing within the chamber beyond the gate, humanoid, motionless, wrapped in coils of necrodermis and light. Neither fully metal nor fully flesh, and its first movement is a breath. The Marines freeze. The figure lifts its head. Eyes ignite like twin suns. This is no Necron. This is something the Necrons tried to bury. Something that should have died with the old ones. Its voice is not heard but felt, a resonance deep in Acastion's bones, prison broken. Cycle repeats. Your kind arrives too soon or far too late. Acastion takes a step back, bolter raised, but the figure tilts its head with something like curiosity. Then it speaks again, the galaxy awakens, and the jailer is gone. Acastion's heart clenches. What escaped? He asks, but the figure only smiles, a smile without warmth, without humanity, without mercy, and raises a hand toward the distant stars, toward the very fabric of reality trembling at the edges. Not what escaped, it murmurs. What returns? As the chamber shakes with a rising, impossible power, Acastion realizes the truth with a horror that sears itself into his soul. The war in heaven was not a battle between two forces. It was a containment effort, and the thing they were trying to contain is coming back. Akastian feels the chamber tremble as if the world itself flinches from the being before him. Dust drips from the ceiling like falling ash, and the glow behind the entity intensifies, spilling golden fire across the vault. His brothers fan out, bolters raised, but every instinct in their transhuman flesh screams that no weapon forged by mortal hands will matter here. The figure takes a single step forward and the temperature drops, cold enough to bite through ceramite. Akastian's breath fogs inside his helm. Then, with a slow, almost reverent gesture, the being presses its palm against the cracked gate behind it. The metal pulses. Akastian realizes with a jolt that it is not sealing the gate, it is holding something back. Something vast, something hungry, and with that realization comes dread. The being is not their enemy. It is their warning. Vale's body convulses on the interrogation slab, eyes rolling back, mouth open in a silent scream. Within the vision, he stands in a landscape made of shattered constellations, each star dripping molten gold. A rift tears through the sky, not of warp energy, but something harsher, cleaner, like a blade slicing reality. Figures spill from the wound beings of impossible geometry, their bodies folding and unfolding as if built from broken laws. They move like reflections in a cracked mirror. Vale tries to step back, but the vision grips him like a vice. Behind him, something ancient whispers a truth he cannot bear. The war was never fought to defend creation, but to limit what could devour it. Vale snaps awake with a gasp, blood running from his nose. The Inquisitor leans close, demanding answers, but Vale only weeps. Humanity is fighting the wrong war. Akastian tenses as the being finally releases the gate. Crack widens, spilling golden light that twists into spirals of unbearable brilliance. For a heartbeat, he sees something within, something colossal, moving, waking. The being turns to him with an expression that might have been sorrow. Your kind was shaped to endure, it murmurs, voice resonant with memory older than stars. But endurance will not save you from what is owed. Akastian steps forward, defiance burning in his chest, but before he can speak, the chamber floor shatters. A tremor rips through Altaneris from its core, a howl of planetary agony. The gate fractures further. Something presses against it from the other side. Something that should not exist. The being looks up sharply. For the first time, it seems afraid. Across the galaxy, psychers fall to their knees. Choirs aboard black ships scream in unison, hands clawing at their skulls as a pressure they cannot name crushes their minds. Astropaths go blind as a wave of anti-psychic force sweeps through real space, snuffing out warp connections like candles in a void storm. On Terra, the astronomicon flickers. For a moment, a single, terrible moment, the beacon dims. Tech priests wail in binary prayer. Space Marines across the Imperial Palace drop to one knee as psychic turbulence rattles the golden throne. Deep within its labyrinthine machinery, the Emperor's withered fingers twitch. A mechanical cough echoes. Throne surfs faint. Something ancient, something that should not stir, shifts ever so slightly. Vale is dragged from the interrogation chamber as alarms blare across the fortress. Crimson lights bathe the corridors. The Inquisitor barks orders, but the servants of the Ordo Hereticus falter, unsettled by the psychic pressures still pressing at their skulls. Vale feels the dread rising again, but beneath it, buried deep, is something colder. A realization. The visions have changed. They no longer show only the past or present. They show a convergence. Three powers spiraling toward a single point. The Necrons, the Old Ones' forgotten creations, and something beneath Altaneris older than either. Vale stops walking. You cannot stop what is coming, he whispers. But you might choose what survives it. Akastian rallies his remaining brothers as the vault collapses around them. The being strides forward, extending one luminous hand, and the rubble dissolves into harmless dust before it can crush them. Its presence is staggering, neither biological nor mechanical, neither psychic nor null, but something between. Identify yourself, Akastian demands, though his voice trembles. The being's gaze dims with ancient fatigue. I am what remains of the first wardens. The words echo with unbearable weight. Akastian realizes what this means. Before the stand, before the Necrons, before the Old One's final war, there was something else. A threat so great that both Empire and Machine once united to imprison it. And that prison has cracked. From the depths of the gate comes a sound of scraping, grinding hum that resonates like a dying star. Dust explodes outward as something presses against the weakening barrier. The warden staggers, its glow flickering. It is not fully awake, the being murmurs, but its dream shaped the void. Its hunger shapes the warp. Its return will unmake every god, every creed, every law. Akashian feels the truth of the words burning through him. He has faced high fleets, chaos war masters, alien horrors older than memory, but nothing like this. The gate heaves. A sliver of darkness leaks through a darkness so absolute it absorbs light, devours sound, erases thought. Marine behind Akashian dies instantly, his mind imploding within his skull. In the warp, the chaos gods recoil. Tzeentch collapses into a storm of impossible shapes. Nurgle's laughter falters. Slaanesh shrieks as entire stretches of the warp turn to lifeless, glassy plains. Khorne roars, not in rage, but in defiance, as his fortress of brass trembles. They know this darkness. They remember it from before their births, before emotion gave shape to their existence. A force without malice or passion, void that consumes both hope and despair. It is the one enemy chaos cannot corrupt and cannot withstand. And it is waking. Thale stares out a window slit as the sky over Terra ripples like a disturbed ocean. Golden light from the Astronomicon flickers again, dimming to a thin thread. He senses the Emperor's presence straining, burning brighter in response to the cosmic pressure. He knows, Vale whispers. He remembers. The Inquisitor turns sharply. Who? Vale swallows hard. His voice is frayed. Then, the Emperor. He fought them. Before Terra. Before humanity. The Inquisitor dismisses it as madness. But even he trembles when the horizon darkens, the air crackling with tension as if reality itself is bracing for something unbearable. On Altaneris, Akashian makes a choice. He steps between the gate and the warden, bolter raised, though he knows ammunition means nothing here. Tell me what to do, he demands. His voice carries the weight of every oath he has ever sworn. The warden looks at him as if seeing him for the first time not as a warrior, but as a possibility. You cannot stop its awakening, it says softly, but you may decide who stands when the light dies. The floor splits, metal warping into impossible shapes. Akashian steadies himself. He thinks of Jorvin dying beneath the Thunderhawk's wreckage. He thinks of Ultramar's burning fields. He thinks of everything he has sworn to protect, and something inside him hardens. The gate fractures with a scream of rending reality. Darkness spills outward like liquid night. The warden braces itself, blazing with desperate light. Akashian fires into the void, knowing it is useless but refusing to yield. The darkness recoils slightly, not from pain, but from surprise, as if tasting something unfamiliar, something defiant, something alive. The warden turns to him one last time, its voice trembling with strain. It recognizes you. Akashian freezes. It remembers what your kind once were. The darkness surges. The gate explodes. And in the blinding collision of light and void, Akashian finally understands this is not the return of an ancient enemy. It is the return of a truth buried since the war in heaven. A truth about humanity itself. A truth the Emperor never wanted anyone to know. The world shatters around him, and then everything goes silent. The air split with a shriek of tortured reality, as the last echo of the stanza's fractured consciousness slipped into silence, and for a single heartbeat the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The cryptarch sagged forward, his hand trembling over the cliff-rown slab, while Cassian stood motionless beside him, armor humming with residual energy. The ghost of the revelation they had just witnessed clung to them like ash. Across the chamber's obsidian walls, star maps flickered, each one marked with wounds inflicted across millions of years. Cassian felt the weight of history press down on him until his knees almost buckled. The war in heaven was no myth, no distant fable. It had left scars deeper than the void itself. But even as the truth settled, a new sound stirred behind them like chains being dragged across stone. The cryptarch's visor dimmed. We are no longer alone. The shadows rippled, peeling themselves away from the wall like living oil. Cassian's bolter snarled into readiness, its machine spirit already tasting blood. From the darkness stepped figures shrouded in shimmering distortion, Necron-like guard, their blades crackling with silent ancient hunger. Their eyes burned with malice older than the Imperium itself. Cassian aimed, yet something in their stance halted his trigger finger. They did not advance. Instead, they angled their blades downward in a gesture that felt eerily ceremonial. The lead light guard extended an arm toward the star map fragment the cryptarch held. They wanted, Cassian muttered, but the cryptarch shook his head slowly, horror growing behind his helm. No, Captain, they want us to follow. The floor beneath them rumbled as mechanisms tens of millions of years old began to whir, clack, and unfold. Gold veined stone parted to reveal a descending pathway lit by ghostly emerald luminescence. Cassian exchanged a glance with the cryptarch, no words needed. Duty demanded they walk this path, even if it led into madness. As they descended, the air grew colder, charged with the memory of ancient suffering. Wall carvings emerged on either side, silent murals depicting the rise of the Old Ones, the forging of the Necrunter Empire, and the birth of the Stand. But the final mural froze Cassian in place. It showed a figure robed in light, neither Necrunter nor Stand, an entity of impossible form, turning its gaze toward a crude depiction of mankind. The cryptarch leaned closer. This should not exist. The mural shifted as they passed it, as though reacting to their presence, and the captain felt a whisper brush the edge of his thoughts, a voice that was not a voice, echoing from the abyss of time. He tasted the copper tang of blood in his mouth and clenched his jaw against the intrusion. The corridor ended in a cavern so vast it felt like a world turned inside out. Suspended in its center was a sphere of fractured starlight, caught in a lattice of necrodermis tendrils. It pulsed like a dying heart. Cassian recognized it instantly, the shard they had seen in the vision, the last remnant of a Stand slain in the final hours of the war in heaven. But the shard was awake. A thin thread of radiance extended outward like a beckoning finger. It wants to show us, the cryptarch whispered, voice cracking. Light consumed everything. Cassian didn't see it so much as drown in it. He fell through memories not his own across burning skies where old one-bio-titans clashed with Necron legions, through warp storms howling with newborn chaos entities drawn to the carnage like vultures. He saw a star collapse under the weight of too many souls screaming at once. He saw the Necrunner's last cities crumble, civilizations extinguished with surgical coldness. But then the vision twisted, narrowing onto a single point, Terra. Not as Cassian knew it, but as it was in the age of thunderous beginnings. Primitive, untouched, something immense descending upon it, wrapped in shadows neither physical nor war-born. Cassian reached for the image, but the vision fractured. The cryptarch screamed, and the world of light exploded. Cassian hit the metal floor of the cavern hard enough to crack ceramite. His ears rang. Smoke coiled from the cryptarch's armor, the psychic backlash near fatal. The light guard watched silently, their unreadable eyes fixed upon the sphere whose glow had now dimmed to embers. Cassian rose unsteadily, gripping the cryptarch's shoulder. What did you see? He demanded. The cryptarch's breathing rasped. Not the war in heaven, but what came after. A survivor. Something the Old Ones feared. Something the Necrons tried to bury. Something that Emperor Protectus set its eyes on humanity long before the dark age of technology. Cassian felt a chill deepen in his bones. Why show us? The cryptarch answered with a shudder. Because it is waking again. A tremor surged through the structure, dust drifting down in spectral curtains. The light guard moved instantly, forming a protective ring around Cassian and the cryptarch, not attacking but guiding, urging them back toward the ascent. Cassian didn't hesitate. He half-dragged the cryptarch up the pathway as ancient machinery roared to life. Somewhere deep below, metal screamed as though something titanic stirred in its sleep. Emerald light guttered, the murals flickered, and a low, resonant pulse shivered the air like the heartbeat of a god rising from the grave. Cassian pushed harder, every instinct screaming that they were seconds from being entombed with something the galaxy had forgotten for a reason. They emerged into the upper chamber just as the floor behind them split open, molten fire belching upward. Cassian shielded the cryptarch with his armored bulk as the shockwave hurled debris in all directions. The star map console shorted out in showers of sparks, glyphs dying mid-flicker. The light guard emerged moments later, battered but unbowed, their metal forms steaming. They did not pursue Cassian. They only watched, silent and solemn, as he carried the cryptarch toward the exit, almost as if acknowledging a shared burden. Then, without a word, they turned back toward the depths, descending into the smoke-choked ruins below. Cassian felt a pang of dread twist in his gut. Whatever lay beneath, even they feared it. Outside, the tomb entrance shook violently as the mountain itself groaned under unseen strain. Cassian triggered his Vox. Strike Cruiser Helios, prepare immediate extraction. Priority Omega. We have uncovered. Something static crackled back at him, followed by the strained voice of the shipmaster. Captain, warp interference is unprecedented. The sky is tearing. We must leave orbit. Cassian looked upward and froze. The heavens above the tomb whirled, writhed with fractures of purple and crimson, warp tendrils lashing against real space like claws scraping glass. The cryptarch stirred weakly. It heard us. Across time, across death, it heard us. Cassian gritted his teeth, lifting the scholar into the Thunderhawk. Then we run before it answers. The gunship streaked upward, engines roaring against the growing turbulence. Lightning forked across the stratosphere, veins of balefire crawling through the storm. Cassian stared out the viewport at the surface below, cracks slithering across the desert like veins of black fire converging on the tomb entrance as if drawn to the awakening beneath. The cryptarch whispered, barely conscious. Captain, the vision showed more. A name. A warning. Cassian leaned closer. Tell me. The cryptarch's voice was a breath, a dying ember. The war in heaven was never finished. Cassian felt the bottom of his soul drop, because the way the scholar said it did not sound like prophecy. It sounded like a promise, and far below them, in the tomb's burning depths, something answered.